Welcome back to TRX Tender Radio. This is Leslie Swan here with
Michael Bolton.
Yay!
Big virtual high five from LA to Tennessee.
All right, and we are talking with Joel Poindexter about his article on the 10th Amendment Center website called "The 5 Greatest Threats to Your Liberty Today." So, Joel, I want to go on to one of the other threats that you mentioned, specifically war, which you put in parentheses as a war on humanity. And, you know, you've apparently have noticed as well as I do that war is a great excuse for governments to crack down and implement tyranny, all in the name of, quote, safety. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on war and how this is one of the 5 greatest threats to our liberty.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned it right there. It becomes an excuse for so many others. We can talk about just the moral issue of war in itself, killing other people, particularly innocents that get caught up in this. I mean, that's, a lot of people don't consider the cost in terms of civilian lives. They see, the body counts of soldiers or the enemy killed, and they think of that as somehow a 6 score. But they don't think about the civilian deaths. They don't think about the women and children that are caught up in it, that are orphaned, that are displaced. And it really is tragic. But some of the other things, too, here at home, people are insulated from seeing all of this, from having to participate in it. And I've written before that I think that's part of the problem. Not that I wish that people in the United States had to see it and had to experience it, but I think we'd be fighting a lot less wars if that were the case. But even here at home, you see, anybody who's traveled in the last 10 years knows exactly what I'm talking about when I mention, liberties being sacrificed for security.
Joel, you also talk about the privacy war, the one that makes all others possible. How is that? I mean, some people tell me it's the Fed that makes all the wars possible. So how is it that the war on privacy does that? Is it, you say it's the national security state? Can you give us a little more?
Yeah, the idea is that you couldn't fight a drug war if you didn't have a drug enforcement agency that could spy on and track and monitor the activities of everybody's day-to-day life. You couldn't have a war on food if you didn't have agents from the FDA or the USDA posing as customers to Amish farmers so that they could perform sting operations. You couldn't have the war on the currency if you didn't have legal tender laws and essentially a regulatory system that forces people to use the dollar, that encourages them to not use cash, to use their credit cards or use electronic payments, which are, of course, easily monitored, and so many others. I mean, you've got the Patriot Act, you've got the National Defense Authorization Act, you've got all these CISPA or PIPA, SOPA, all these they're all surveillance-based, they're all data-gathering programs, and they make everything else possible.
Well, a statement I heard today that I thought was hilarious. I'm curious to get your thoughts in light of this your thoughts on the privacy war. The NSA apparently people have been trying to ask and assert well, how many people approximately have you been spying on over the course of, the Patriot Act and the warrantless wiretapping and all that? And their response was something along the lines of, we can't tell you that because that would violate their privacy. So,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would guess they probably couldn't tell us because they don't even know themselves. There's probably so much, information out there that just distilling it is going to be a task in and of itself. But of course, that's, it's like the idea that you have executive privilege. Oh, well, I can't disclose that information because I'm the president, and doing so would jeopardize national security. I mean, it's a farce. We all know that's not really the real answer. We know that they wouldn't tell us unless they absolutely had to, and you'd probably have to torture them to get it out of them. It's not like...
And, of course, we are not advocating torturing anyone, right?
No, not at all.
Right.
But that's my point, is that, what's acceptable for them to do to us is not acceptable to do to them.
Right.
And that's the double standard that we face with government.
Joel, as you were writing this article for the site, did you Were there any that you were basically like borderline, like, okay, I'm not going to add this one to the article? What didn't make it?
Yeah, well, I'd considered education, government instituted schooling, K through 12, college. I mean, the whole thing. I had read an article on LRC, and the author basically said if I could, eliminate any program, just one, it would be government education, because it essentially brainwashes people, and go figure, the government's going to run the schools, so of course they're not going to disparage themselves. But I thought about it, and I realized there is an option with that. We can opt out. You can opt out of government education. There's still a semi-private education through some private schools, and you of course can homeschool. I was homeschooled myself. You can't opt out of the drug war. Mm-hmm. You can't say, I'm not going to not be a victim of the drug war. But with education, at least in most states, it's fairly reasonable. I mean, there's some are easier than others, but you can do that yourself.
Right. I'd love to. We could probably go on for hours on this because there are so many threats to our freedom and our security, but we actually have to cut it about now. Can you tell us, you've got a personal blog too, beyond all the writing for LouRockwell.com. That's LRC for those of you listening that didn't know that acronym, antiwar.com, and of course here, 10th Amendment Center, Mises. Where do they follow your work? Facebook, Twitter, what's the best?
The best is just through my blog at WordPress. It's economicharmonies.wordpress.com. I try to get on there at least once a day, if not a couple times a week at minimum, just to put stuff up there so they can check me out there, and love to have them come over.
Joel, can't thank you enough for spending some time with us tonight. I mean, all the back and forth we've had on Facebook and the articles that you've wrote, this is our first chance to actually talk on, and it's in public. But one of these, we'll have to keep doing this. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, not only with us, but for the liberty movement in general.
Well, no, thanks for having me on. Thanks for giving me a platform with the 10th Amendment Center site. It's been great, and I'd be glad to come back.